look at you. Yeah, I guess you took the hard road. Well, me too. You'd think we'd learn. No, all in the name of progress, right? They say there's always something better. Burn the old, bring in the new. Well, how'd that work out? Risked our whole future. And we trusted them. And now we fight them any way we can. For what? For what's left of humanity.
Seasonal flu, 35.5 million cases, but coronavirus 400, 34,200 deaths seasonal from the flu, 21 deaths so far. I mean, they're just priming the pump on all of this stuff just to bring in the fear. So please do not feed the fears, folks, but the agenda is clear. First, I would highly suggest that you get yourself prepared to be home quarantined for at least a few weeks. Everybody's staying at home. There's going to be no income coming in. What happens to mortgage payments? What happened to rent? They've already suspended a delay in making your tax payment.
Hello, this is Nicholson 1968. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to my new project, Back to Human. Before the intro, I played a video game trailer from Disintegration: Reboot Humanity. Very interesting video game, but I'll get to that a little bit later. I want to start off with a book that was written 2,500 years ago by Sun Tzu called Art of War. And the first rule of Art of War is know thy enemy. And that is the key to understanding what is going on in this realm. A lot of people claim to know what's going on. They say they know the enemy, but they leave out a portion that they miss a lot of information. And what I'm talking about is most people think the enemy is a physical enemy alone, and it is not. It is a physical enemy along with a spiritual or a hidden realm. Call it what you want. But that is the portion that if you don't understand, if you don't respect that, you don't believe in that part of the enemy, then you miss a lot of information. Even the Bible in Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And a lot of people don't want to believe that. Even Christians, they forget about that part of the spiritual side. They think it's either Democrats or Republican, or it's right or left. When you get caught up in that right-left paradigm, that's where they want you. They want you fighting against each other so you don't understand that third person. I call it the third person in the room that's standing in the corner that poked the stick at both sides that are watching you fight each other. All along, the enemy is in the corner, that spiritual realm.
But this is going to, they're doing many, many things at once. Mandatory flu vaccines, world community nations to go to the cashless digital because the currencies are passing the virus around. No protests. You're not going to be able to organize and protest. You're going to have food delivered to you. The smart cities, digital identification for every human being being chipped. When they reopen the centers, the places of public places, public, right? They're public places, but we can't go there. They're going to have all these restrictions that you're going to have to get on a plane. You're going to have to go to a sporting event. You're not going to be able to do it unless you agree to take it, whatever they're telling you have to do, whether it be biometric IDs, forced vaccinations, or submit. We still have time to stop this. It always starts with education and awareness. And we need to get educated and aware to what we're up against, and our options have to be to come together. We have to find those of us that are not going to drink the Kool-Aid. We're not going to submit. We're not going to obey. You cannot own me.
Are we now seeing the true form of one of the world's largest companies? Is Walmart an entity of the government, operating in the private sector, meant to usher in martial law? Is its purpose found even in its name? I will take you through 6 facts that expose Walmart's deep connection to the US government and its preparation for mandatory RFID chipping and martial law coming to the US. I would highly advise you to listen carefully to this entire video. The information contained in it is extremely important. Fact number 1. To understand the truth about Walmart, you first need a history lesson. The founder, Sam Walton, is long deceased, but his legacy is very much alive. What is he remembered for? Well, you may not know that Sam Walton was a part of the U.S. intelligence agency during World War II and a security chief over internment camps located inside of the United States. These camps held hundreds of thousands of whites of German and Italian descent and Asians of Japanese descent. They were held there after FDR violated their constitutional rights. Sam Walton oversaw these prisoners of war. The Walmart U.S. government connection is not new, you see. It goes way, way back. Armed with that information, let us continue to fact number 2. From 2001 through 2016, Walmart has received an estimated $50 to $100 billion in secret subsidies granted by the U.S. government. We know several industries are subsidized by the government to keep prices low. But why Walmart? There are entire websites dedicated to following Walmart's grants, tax breaks, and earmarks. These websites unanimously agree that Walmart has received tens of billions of dollars in kickbacks over the years. Why are they getting so much money? Is it merely to keep their prices low? Or is it for other expenditures? Fact number 3. Walmart has struck a deal with the U.S. government, hiring 130,000 reserve, active duty, and veterans in the United States over the past 3 years. A massive force of highly trained and skilled soldiers. It's an odd fact, because recently they just fired thousands of regular workers and closed 269 stores because of financial problems, or so they said. Walmart explained that their 2016 store closings were an attempt to save money. So why did they just hire 130,000 new employees? Of course, we always celebrate when veterans are treated with respect and given good jobs, but this is strange. 130,000 sounds more like a small army.
That is so important. And to address that, they're like, well, I can't see that. Nicholson, I can't touch it. I can't feel it. Look, you can't touch or feel airwaves, radio airwaves either. You can't touch them. You have to use a radio tuner to tune those in. Does that mean that radio waves don't exist? No, they quite well do exist. You have to just tune in, just like the enemy is around us all the time. You just have to use your senses to tune in. Most don't have the time. They don't have the patience to tune in. That's why all of the distractions from the media, music, videos, all of this stuff to keep you occupied so that you don't realize what's going on around you in a hidden realm, spiritual realm. So the other thing is they want to get you to believe that it doesn't exist. That's right down their alley.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. Nobody ever believed he was real. That was his power.
This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, of getting you to believe in something that's not real. They want you to believe it's not real. Video game called I Am Jesus Christ. Yes, that's correct. You heard correct. A video game coming out called I Am Jesus Christ. You can play as Jesus Christ, walk the Sea of Galilee, healing people, performing miracles for points. Now, I mean, You talk about blasphemy, mocking is unbelievable. Is Jesus Christ real? This is just a video game. You see where this is blurring in the way they twist things. Is just like everything else, just like Christmas and Santa Claus. When they find out Santa Claus was just a myth and never existed really, he can't perform miracles at night, delivering toys all in one night. So why should we believe in Jesus Christ? That's where the line is. And this is a perfect example. Again, video games showing you stuff, telling you stuff, manipulating, twisting it. There's a little bit of truth in it, but it always has that little twist to it most of the time. The big releases that are released out there, it is to twist and construe the information and deviate from the true purpose behind it. Interestingly enough, we can't dismiss video games. Like I said, some contain truth, some lies. But there are some that came out that actually did predict the future and come pretty close to real-life events. Number one being Deus Ex Human Revolution, which actually in 2011, when this game was out, it predicted that a political neophyte would become the next Prime Minister of Canada. And at that time, that was a far, far stretch. And actually, it happened 2 years later. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. It predicted a Russian invasion into Georgia. Actually happened. It was like, who had the military war plan of this video game? It's like they used it to actually implement it. Metal Gear 2. Solid Snake predicted that algae would become biofuel in the future. And that came to pass years later. Another one, Homefront, predicted that a North Korean leader, Kim Jong-il, would die in 2012. In real life, he actually died December 17th, 2011. Wow, a few weeks later, Homefront would have been spot on, him passing away in 2012. So that leads me to my intro of Disintegration, Humanity Rebooted. I'm drawing attention to this video game, Disintegration, Reboot Humanity. I'm going to read directly from their website telling you something. In Earth's near future, climate extremes, overpopulation, food shortages, and global pandemic led to nations collapsing and humankind on the brink of extinction. Scientists adopted a means in which the human brain was removed and surgically encased into a robotic armature, a process known as integration. It was meant to be a temporary solution to an unavoidable crisis. Does this sound like something that could really happen in the future? Yes, it can. Like I said, for years, I told you, the one game is the battle for your soul. So the synopsis in general of what this video game is telling us is a very few will trick the masses into believing that in order for humanity to survive, because of all of the pollution, all of the chemtrails, all the GMO foods, we can't even physically reproduce on our own anymore because that is also contaminated. Digital money will be coming because the physical money you have in your pockets, your coins, the paper that you touch, it's too dangerous. Everything will be tried to control, trick you into putting your brain consciousness into a humanoid robotic body, a transhuman per se, and then after we solve all of this problem on Earth, then we will bring you back and become human again. We will get you back to human, but you will be tricked and led down the wrong path if you don't understand what is going on in this realm. This is why it's so important and why I'm sharing this video. After so many years, I've told you again of the one game. Now I'm trying to help you understand the end game to get to the one game. And this is a possibility of what can come. And again, controlling humanity through technology. And look what's happening now with the coronavirus out now. We've been warning you and warning you for years and years and years. It's all about control. It's just a stepping stone to what I am telling you about of transhumanism in the future. They have to take it in sections. They study the public, see how we react. They roll things out. Is there a mandatory vaccine coming? Who knows? But that'll be based on how the public reacts to what is going on. They study it.
I wanted to give you a crucial update. So my cousin that works for the Pentagon, my aunt that lives in D.C., and my friend that works for the government in Knoxville, between last night and today, I've had 3 people notify me that has not been announced yet, but the U.S. is about to go on a 4-week quarantine, which means you cannot leave your home. You can't go to anywhere that you can do sales transactions like grocery stores, shopping, movies, anything like that. So in about 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks, they're going to announce this shutdown. Once the shutdown is in place or the warning, everything from the grocery store is going to be cleared out. At this time, it's critical that you stock up on canned goods, frozen foods, things that you'll be able to survive off of 2 weeks from or 4 weeks for. Toilet tissue, paper towels. It's bigger than just Clorox and bleach. You got to be able to feed your family.
Hey, folks. Hey, that was from a voicemail that was sent to me on Facebook Messenger, and I asked the person that sent it if they knew the author, and they said no. So I have no idea the credibility of it, but what we're seeing is everybody being vacated from public spaces, everybody being told to stay 6 feet apart, nobody allowed to gather more than 250. We got schools closing across the country now, so everybody's going to be at home. So it's very, very possible that they could announce a mandatory quarantine. And so what are we seeing here today? We're seeing 1 year in jail or $50,000 fine. This is the Daily Mail talking about in Australia for self-isolation amid the outbreak. Refusing to self-isolate, being diagnosed could face fines and jail time. Some states can place behind bars for a year and a fine for $50,000. What they're told to see a doctor. So those reflate a $50,000 fine. So they're saying that if you've been in contact with anybody who has been in South Korea, China, Iran, or Italy, anybody. Now, we all know that Australia has been under attack with the fires, the directed energy weapons, just like out here in California as well. But it's been relentless on the Australians, again, breaking the back of the liberal countries in order to show everybody who's the real power. So this was a law, a new biosecurity law enacted in 2000, started in 2014. New law allows forced vaccinations or jail to prevent suspected disease, all right? So we're going to get into this so you get an idea of what's coming and likely or possibly coming ahead to us now. Individuals suspected of having a serious contagious disease, just suspected, could face 5 years in prison if they defied orders to stay at home, including forced vaccinations, quarantine, or jail, according to legislation passed Australian law. The Biosecurity Bill 2014 cleared Parliament yesterday and is aimed at, quote, preventing the spread of disease such as Ebola in human populations despite having no confirmed cases. Sound familiar? New human biosecurity controls, that's our new buzzword, folks, biosecurity. We're probably going to have the Bio-Patriot Act coming out. Control orders to enable a health department official to force anyone with signs or symptoms of a listed disease to isolate themselves or face arrest. So what are they going to do? They're going to arrest you and put you in prison with a bunch of other people that have the disease as well who've refused to be vaccinated or forced vaccinations or stay at home. They're going to group you all together and have a bunch of guards guarding you. I mean, does this make any sense? No. Doesn't mean it's not happening. The Director of Human Biosecurity can also order someone to be vaccinated or treated. Now, do you remember out here in California, AB 267 passed last year, said county officials, public health officials, with 3 cases or more can demand quarantine or, they didn't say it, but mandatory vaccinations as well. So the pins are already put in place out here in California to do the exact same thing. Just all that's needed is this kind of legislation. The legislation allows biosecurity officers to conduct searches without warrants in emergencies related to pest or disease. Now we got a new term, biosecurity officers. Who are they? Well, they're ones that are hired by the CDC.gov for Public Health Advisor Quarantine Program. Look at the date, folks. November 15th, 2019. Remember, the outbreak didn't start until December. Locations: Dallas, Texas, San Francisco, California, yada, yada, yada. So these newly hired crisis actors are going to be empowered to determine quarantine levels, mass vaccination, and incarceration and fines should you not comply and be obedient. As Californians and other areas are banning groups of 250 more, and said should happen if people are standing 6 feet apart. So what does that effectively do? Let's see you try and protest this and get any groups together to try and protest what they're doing. Effectively, you're going to be breaking these new laws by gatherings, by communicating in social gatherings. We're not even allowed to come together more than 6 feet. This is beyond the pale. Or another term they've come up with is social distancing, to further and divide and conquer us all. But they're not messing around with this, folks. This is from CNBC, the business channel. Up to 150 million Americans are expected to contract the coronavirus, congressional doctor says. Almost half the United States population, Dr. Brian Monahan, attending physician of Congress, expects 70 million to 150 million people will become infected. Are you kidding me? So this is why they put the law in place, so they can have it already on the books to use for their quarantine purposes. So let's further down this. Several people, this was back at the Ebola. I mean, maybe that's why they brought the Ebola in, so they can implement these laws. This includes limitations of movement to a secure area. This is the ordered legislation of individuals showing symptoms by the health minister. It says limitations of movement and movement to a secure area. Now we know what Rex 84 is all about, right? Without being proven to have the disease. Think about all the ships now, all the Princess Cruises now that aren't having people on them anymore. They're just floating prisons. A human biosecurity control order may be applied if any individual has signs or symptoms or has been exposed to a listed human disease, or if the individual has not complied with an entry requirement under clause, here's that number, 44, and therefore poses a risk to the broader community. These strict limitations in the application of human biosecurity control order ensure that measures applied relate only to the management of listed human diseases, proportionate legitimate limitation to an individual's freedom of movement. An ill individual may be required by a human biosecurity control order to attend a specified medical facility to facilitate assessment and treatment of all individuals, including undergoing an examination, including providing body samples for diagnosis, including treatment or mandatory vaccinations. It is essential where an individual is suspected of suffering from a listed human disease that the individual be moved to an appropriate place where medical treatment and privacy can be assured. Out of state, out of mind. We talking closed down Walmarts here, folks? Are we talking FEMA camps, folks? What are we talking by that language? Can be moved to appropriate place of privacy. The new legislation was introduced in Parliament in 2014. It was tabled in 2012. This is how long they've been planning it. Passed at both levels of government in 2015. The bill outlines the reversing the legality surrounding the burden of proof, placing it in the hands of the defendant, as opposed to the traditional approach of the prosecution. Well, you know what's going to be in my hands as the defendant? I'm going to defend my right to say, F you. And I hope all of you are well protected and consider the fact that you may have to protect your family against this invasion. So what I want to show you here, and I'll just scroll, this is the actual bill itself, and I'm going to scroll down and just show you. This is a big bill. This is well thought out and written. Clear legislation to manage biosecurity risk, improving compliance, offense and penalties, entry without warrant or consent, right to the presumption of innocence, reverse burden provisions they called it, health, human biosecurity control orders, first points of entry and biosecurity entry points of incoming aircraft and vessels. What are they locking down? The borders. I mean, this bill goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on to take away all of our rights to freedom, folks. at their behest, at their creation. And you want to know who else was in on this? Check this out. March 11th, 2020. Look at all the drug companies on board making the vaccines. Check this out. Favipiravir, pharmaceutical companies developing the corona drugs and vaccines. Autoimmunes. Look at them all. I'll just roll down here. But they would not be coming up with all these vaccines unless they knew there was going to be markets on it, unless they knew there was going to be big business. You know, I'm not even halfway down scrolling. You know, these are all the companies coming up with the coronavirus vaccines. You don't think there's going to be mandatory vaccines? You think you're going to be able to resist? You think if you can't get food in the stores, you're going to be able to resist the vaccines? Think again. You're going to have to be able to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. You're going to have to rely on others to help protect yourself and others, and you better have some protection because this is getting very, very real. See how many companies it's going on here? And check this out. The Gates from Hell, who did the testing back in October 18th, 2019 of the exact coronavirus, is also giving Inovio $5 million for DNA vaccines for delivery intradermally between the layers of the skin. So that you can see it's being promoted. He's being promoted that this is Gates' deal. He's putting up $5 million for intradermal skin testing. So what is intradermal skin testing? That's a little prick and a jab that you're going to use to see if you have the coronavirus. And you're going to either send it to your homes or somebody's going to come to your home and do a skin prick and they're going to send it in and then the testing will be available within minutes to see if you have the virus. And if you have it, they're going to come and take you away. Possible? Probable? I have no idea. I'm just showing you what I'm finding. And this probably escaped most people, but this other day, Trump signs in an $8.3 billion corona funding bill, telehealth restrictions waived. So the decision to waive restrictions on telemedicine was applauded. The decision was praised by the American Telemedicine Association, which urged the Centers for Medicare and Medi-Cal to implement the waiver as soon as possible. Hey, we're really happy you're passing this. Telehealth is well suited to provide one-to-many care that is safe, effective, and efficient. So this is to get around having to go to doctors. Doctors can do it over the internet. And what are they doing sharing on the internet? All of your personal vital information. Well, why is that so important, or what does that matter? Well, what have we been seeing over the past, this was 2017? Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple going to disrupt healthcare big time. Why? Because all your information, all your healthcare, all your privacy is going to go through these agencies of the communication devices that have to be online. The online testing, research kits, care kits, they're going to be provided by these assholes. Excuse my French, but I am pissed. All right? This has been planned for a very, very long time to take away the rights of everyone and take away the future of our children. This should make you angry as well, folks.
The discounter is literally in the back pocket of the U.S. government, cooperating on a variety of different initiatives. One of these was a massive introduction of RFID chipping into Walmart's supply chain back around 2003, introduced alongside the Department of Defense. Why was the DoD involved with Walmart on RFID? Walmart was also cooperating with DHS Secretary Janet Napolitano on an initiative to report suspicious people in their facilities. Why is the DHS working with Walmart on this? Additionally, several former Walmart executives are currently working for the U.S. government in FEMA positions in emergency preparedness. For example, Walmart disaster manager Brian Coons was appointed to spearhead Florida Emergency Response and Disaster Readiness Divisions. Why are these former Walmart executives being promoted in the government to major positions of disaster response? Fact number 6. Walmart has recently cooperated with Omar Mateen's former employer called G4S on initiatives in its U.S. stores involving security. Could there be a connection between what happened in Orlando and Walmart? Before I address this, I want to caution viewers. Please do not believe what you are being told on television about Orlando. The elites have already gotten what they want, and that is an outcry for heightened security. In order to have security, they'll have to take away guns. They'll have to use more biometrics and RFID to track you. They'll have to put up more cameras to watch you. We're living in 1984. Fear incited by Islamic terrorism is their tool of choice to get you to give in. Notice the cry for gun control after Orlando, the cry for more security. Do not be fooled by their agenda. The lamestream media has convinced everybody about Mateen's radical Islamic ties in order to scare you. I am not interested in the misleading Islamic terrorism narrative that began in 1945 and accelerated in 2001. The narrative is the same. Islamic terrorist attack happens, followed by calls for more gun control, the Patriot Act, more internet monitoring, more cameras, more things to stop a future event like this from happening. It's the same response every single time. Once bin Laden got old, once he didn't cause the fear that they needed him to cause, they got rid of him. And then they created Scary ISIS. Mateen's ISIS connection is a fabrication to get you to submit. I'm not buying it. I am more interested in his 9-year career with a company called G4S, which is the largest security company in the world. If you've ever seen the movie Resident Evil, G4S might bring to mind the Umbrella Corporation, a secretive organization that operates in the shadows. G4S is the third largest employer in the world with a virtual stranglehold over cybersecurity and cyber data in almost every country. It does have other interests, however, including RFID chipping. The company states on its website that one of its goals is to use RFID to track assets and people anywhere in the world. Back in 2011, G4S put in a patent request with the US government for an RFID device that would be used to track people who were incarcerated. No joke. The RFID device is tamper-resistant, worn on the hand or wrist, and is meant to tag and follow prisoners. The patent was just made public in February of 2016, and now G4S will work closely with Walmart. An article published in April of 2016 indicates that Walmart and G4S quietly signed a deal, an agreement on a huge initiative that will change Walmart's entire system of payment in all stores. There will be a gradual rollout of the new system until it is fully implemented.
And then they roll out the next piece of the project. I'm going to play an interview with Anthony Patch. 2014, guys. I even included this in my documentary. Illuminati, the Black Gold Project, was telling you in 2014 it's all about control of DNA, third strand DNA. Our body is the temple of God, period. You may not believe that, don't want to believe it, but here's the problem. The enemy knows it and believes it, whether you believe it or not. I'm going to play this clip. Also, a quick note. Remember, YouTube took this documentary down that this clip is included in, Illuminati's Black Gold Project, that I put out. So pay attention. I'm going to put it in this one as well.
So it sounds far-fetched to the average person who hasn't heard this before, but this is nothing new. But let's go beyond the rabies. Let's talk about people getting a flu shot or getting a avian flu inoculation. There's another very insidious disease, if you will, which is really a man-made disease. It's a biological construct called MERS coronavirus out of the Middle East. It's the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. It's made its way into Europe to a certain extent, and eventually, because of air travel, it will reach around the world. It's another example of where inoculations or vaccines are being derived, or they're trying to derive for. That, again, I always like to go all the way to the end. What's the purpose? What's the goal? If you have a man-made or engineered virus, why was it created? Is it simply just to kill people? Well, that's one part of it, but if you go further and you go deeper than that, it is to get people to demand a vaccine, a shot, if you will, or a pill. Why would, if you're in a position of control, of power, of ultimate power, why would you want people to demand a vaccine? Well, it's because something's in the vaccine that you want people to then have as a part of their body. Well, what is in the vaccine that you want everybody to have inside their body? It is a DNA manipulator or modifier. I mentioned earlier third strand DNA. There is already, and you can find this on the internet, in existence, a third strand of DNA constructed of silicon. Again, we go back to the silicon chip in computers. The third strand is made of silicon and is also coated in gold. If you talk about nanotechnology and nano layers, this is extremely thin coating of gold down to a billionth of a millimeter of gold that is coating the silicon from which you are building a third strand of DNA. The purpose of the gold is to increase the surface area around this strand so that more information can be digitally imparted or programmed. You're essentially, what you're doing is you're creating a third strand of DNA. You are transferring that or imparting it into a person's body through a vaccine that person's demanding because they're afraid of contracting MERS coronavirus or avian flu or whatever it may be. And so the government, if you will, or the powers that be sit back and they kind of chuckle when they say, well, we couldn't have forced people to take this vaccine or to take this hidden third strand of DNA. They would rebel against it. But if we create the problem and present the solution, people will demand the solution. Thus we achieve our ultimate goal of having this DNA in every person changed. Well, let's go deeper. What's the goal? What's the purpose? Yeah, you go around and change everybody's DNA. What do they become? They become a hybrid. The insidious part of this is that once a person is injected, almost immediately their DNA undergoes transformation. Almost immediately they lose all awareness of the fact that they've lost their independence, their ability to think on their own, to make decisions on their own, and to affect them on a moral level. Their moral independence, their beliefs, religious, moral, ethical, legal, all of those go away. If you remove the independent thought and that awareness that you've lost your independence is gone, what then do the powers that be do with these new forms of humans, hybrids? They can control them. They can turn them into a serf class. Not S-U-R-F, not surfers, but S-E-R-F, a class of slaves to serve the elite, to serve the Ray Kurzweils of the world who want to achieve immortality, but they need to have labor to manufacture, develop all of the technologies. And they have enough technologies now. The technology, the scientific world, if you will, has reached the level where they don't care about hiding it anymore. Their agenda is so far advanced, both politically, philosophically, their sense of morals, and technologically, that no longer are they worried about you and me as the serf class and the coming serf class. They're not worried about what we think. They're not worried about us rebelling. And in fact, we won't rebel, partly because right now we've been so dumbed down through a variety of mechanisms. But once people demand the virus and they truly are dumbed down to where they've lost that awareness that something's happened to me, now they can do what they want with us. They are achieving what I call the hive mentality, like a beehive. Worker bees, soldier bees, serving the queen. The queen, in my estimation, is this elite class that's in power, and it's not the politicians. Forget the politicians. This has nothing to do with Republicans, Democrats, Tea Party, libertarians. It has nothing to do with political structure or classes. It has to do with the small group that is in control and has been in control since ancient times.
Now, you may be saying to yourself, you know what, Nicholson, I don't believe in Jesus Christ. I'm not a religious person. I'm not a spiritual person. Okay, I understand that. I get it. So put that on the side and let me talk to you of just, let's talk basics. Upgrading yourself with technology, mixing yourself with it. Ultimately, it can be hacked, just like any computer program, anything in today's world. I mean, all the time you're hearing about data breaches, information leaking out, being controlled. That's what ultimately is the end game for the enemy. Call it whatever you want. There's a spiritual enemy, there's a physical enemy. They work together in concert in this realm. You don't have to believe that. But back to basics, merging with technology, man and machine, is not a good thing. Am I against technology in general? No, I am not. It's how far it will be taken in the future and how fast it's coming. I had no idea, and so do many other YouTubers that agree with me. They know I told people back in 1999 and 2007 on YouTube about this, and look how far we've come. I mean, it is all over the place on YouTube, transhumanism. It's a known thing now to most people on YouTube in the underground, but in the mainstream, not a lot of people have yet heard of it as just it being real. You see it in movies. The latest one is, Hobbs and Shaw. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw.
You know, it's funny how humanity's hate for each other is stronger than its own self-preservation, which is why we're here. Remember 8 years ago, Dad, when Etion asked us to join their mission?
Oh, you mean their death cult? The lunatics.
Visionaries. Visionaries of a future. A bigger future, a brighter future. You remember the data they gave us, man? What with environmental damage, capitalism, terrorism. Humanity wipes itself out by 2096. Now that is scary to me. Because what I've realized now that I did not realize then is that when you shot me, you gave me a gift. Look at me. I'm Black Superman. Bulletproof, new spine, and the more machine I become, the more humane I am. This is what you want to fight for. What's it to be? Join the evolution of man, or die of the weak.
Here's another clip coming out showing you of a movie, Bloodshot with Van Diesel. Just listen, they're telling you something.
We are leading the way in the greatest human advancement of all time. He's unlike anything we've seen before. And he's entirely in our control.
I've developed an army of soldiers like yourself. Improved, enhanced.
Welcome to the circus. The technology in your veins will make you faster, stronger, and heal you instantly.
You made me, but you can't control me forever.
They'll come for you.
I'm looking forward to it.
And again, you may not believe in a spiritual beings, you may not be a religious man, but I want you to make the connection here. And this is what happened to me, is making the connections biblically to what is actually going on in today's world. And I studied many different things. The Quran, New Age, everything. Mormonism, you name it. But only the biblical connects actually what's going on today. It's just understanding that. But we're going to I'm going to read to you 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Now, this is, like I said, it's pretty obvious the enemy is telling you exactly what it wants. And this verse says it right here. This is what ultimately the enemy wants, is who opposeth and exalteth himself above that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God.
In a meeting with state officials, President Xi described it as a grave situation, demanding all patients to be put in a centralized quarantine for treatment, though that may prove difficult with 1,300 cases already confirmed.
The average person touches their face 3 to 5 times every waking minute. In between, we're touching doorknobs, water fountains, and each other.
Matt. Mom? No, go up to your room, honey.
So we have a virus with no treatment protocol and no vaccine at this time.
Is there any way someone could weaponize the bird flu? Is that what we're looking at?
Someone doesn't have to weaponize the bird flu. The birds are doing that.
Watch this. It's transmission, so we just need to know which direction.
On day 1, there were 2 people, and then 4, and then 16. In 3 months, it's 1 billion. That's where we're headed.
They're calling out the National Guard. They're moving the president underground. People will panic.
Get away!
It will tip over.
The truth is being kept from the world.
Cook your samples, destroy everything.
The line between disinformation and misinformation is not always an easy one to find.
Governments need to be willing to do things that are out of their historical perspective, or for the most part, it's really a war footing that we need to be on.
It can happen quickly. A Marshall-type plan, don't mean to say that exactly, but a Marshall plan that can go into effect can stimulate a change very quickly.
The distrust relates to the health system more generally. A step up from the part of the governments on enforcement actions against fake news.
I think a couple of things we have to consider are, even before this began, the anti-vaccine movement was very strong, and this is something specifically through social media that has spread.
Welcome to Event 201.
Hi everyone, I'm Spiro, and what you just witnessed were highlights from Event 201, which took place in New York City on October 18th, 2019. Event 201 is a high-level pandemic exercise hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now, in this report, I will play several clips from Event 201, but I will provide the links below so you can see the pandemic exercise in its entirety, which is nearly 5 hours if you wish to do so. I personally watched every second of it. Now, I believe that this report is directly connected to my recent report on global institutions and governments which are currently pimping the United Nations Climate Agenda program, which seeks to consolidate political and economic power into the hands of the ruling elite. That report is titled The UN and Central Banks, a Rockefeller and Rothschild Coup. And the follow-up to that report, exposing how George Soros is actively bankrolling campaigns to censor content creators on YouTube, which question the legitimacy of man-made climate change, which in my view, based on my research, is nothing more than a false pretext for global regulations, global taxations, consolidation of power and natural resources, in addition to population control and global governance. Now back to Event 201. I find this extremely fascinating because this pandemic simulation exercise of the coronavirus took place about 6 weeks before the first illness from the coronavirus was actually reported in Wuhan, China. Now, that is one hell of a coincidence if you ask me. I'm not sure if you believe in that sort of thing. I have a hard time believing in coincidences. Another fascinating connection is the fact that not only did Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation participate in and help set up the pandemic simulation of the coronavirus outbreak, they also just so happened to fund the group, the very group who owns the patent to the deadly coronavirus and are already working on a vaccine to solve the current crisis. Again, an incredible coincidence, I know. Now, the members of the Emergency Epidemic Board in this simulation consist of representatives from major banks, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Johnson & Johnson, logistical powerhouses, the media, as well as officials from China and Americans' Center for Disease Control, just to name a few. Now, this simulation also includes news reports, which were fabricated just for this exercise. Please keep that in mind because they are eerily similar to reports we are currently seeing regarding the real-world coronavirus outbreak. Now, in the spirit of transparency, I have edited some of the clips only due to time restraints to shorten them. After all, this exercise lasted between 4 and 5 hours, so I condensed as much of the material as I could. Now let's take a quick look at how this simulation began.
Hello everyone, I'm Anita Cicero, Deputy Director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, and today I will be your Master of Ceremonies for Event 201. On behalf of our center and our partners, the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the goal of the Event 201 exercise is to illustrate the potential consequences of a pandemic and the kinds of societal and economic challenges it would pose. Today's scenario is going to simulate meetings of a multi-stakeholder group called the Pandemic Emergency Board. This board has been urgently convened by the World Economic Forum, and Johns Hopkins has been asked to moderate the board meetings and provide expertise during the board's deliberations. The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board's recommendations are aimed at top decision makers in national governments, global business, and international organizations.
The scenario you will be presented with this morning could easily become one shared reality one day. I fully expect that we will be confronted by a fast-moving, highly lethal pandemic of a respiratory pathogen.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care, many died. At first, the spread was limited to those with close contacts, healthcare personnel, co-workers, and families. But now it's spreading rapidly throughout local communities. International travel has turned local epidemics into a pandemic spanning the globe. Just 3 months ago, CAPS started in South America, but has now reached several countries with more than 30,000 cases and nearly 2,000 deaths.
Now, this pandemic simulation was broken up into 5 segments ranging from transportation and trade to communications and continuity of infrastructure. Some of the most shocking material is in segment 4 regarding communications. Let's take a quick look. Again, this is a simulation of a coronavirus outbreak which took place only 6 weeks before the actual coronavirus outbreak.
Global health experts have highlighted that dis and misinformation are wreaking havoc on the CAPS response. Health workers are under attack in a number of locations due to rumors that they are purposely spreading the disease. And response efforts in many places have had to be suspended because of concerns around violence. Pharmaceutical companies are being accused of introducing the CAPS virus so they can make money on drugs and vaccines, and have seen public faith in their products plummet. Unrest due to false rumors and divisive messaging is rising and is exacerbating spread of the disease as levels of trust fall and people stop cooperating with response efforts. This is a massive problem, one that threatens governments and trusted institutions. National governments are considering or have already implemented a range of interventions to combat misinformation. Some governments have taken control of national access to the internet. Others are censoring websites and social media content. And a small number have shut down internet access completely to prevent the spread of misinformation. Penalties have been put in place for spreading harmful falsehoods, including arrests.
Alarming news emerging from social media companies today about the CAPS pandemic.
Twitter and Facebook are reporting they've identified and deleted a disturbing number of accounts dedicated to spreading disinformation about the outbreak. For more on this, we go to our correspondent, Catalina Parks.
Chen, these accounts were created by several state-sponsored groups intending to sow political discord, and some individuals are seemingly seeking to gain financial advantages. Violence against healthcare workers and minority populations has been increasing. A recent riot highlights the real danger in these posts. Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
How much control of information should there be, and by whom? And how can false information be effectively challenged? And what if that false information is coming from companies or from governments?
We're at a moment where the social media platforms have to step forward and recognize the moment to assert that they're a technology platform and not a broadcaster is over. They, in fact, have to be a participant in broadcasting accurate information and partnering with the scientific and health communities to counterweight, if not flood the zone of accurate information, because to put the genie back in the bottle of the misinformation and disinformation is nigh impossible.
One thing we haven't spoken about, and I'm wondering whether it's time to talk about this, is a step up from the part of the governments on enforcement actions against fake news.
My team has been monitoring the public response, and on various social media channels and cable networks, there's been some conspiracy theories that are around about the potential that pharmaceutical companies or the UN have released this for their own benefit. So as we move forward, obviously trust in pharmaceuticals and government is very important at this moment. And so as we move forward with developing the right scenarios, we have to make sure that the public communication is a major part of that because of these conspiracy theories.
As you can see, the subject of dominating and controlling information is a top priority. While I understand that fake news is and can be very dangerous and damaging, we must keep in mind that governments and the media have an extensive track record of dishonesty and selling outright lies to the public all of the time. Now, in this simulation, the Pandemic Emergency Board goes on to decide that a centralized source of information led by the World Health Organization, which falls under the United Nations, is the only way to ensure that they can control information in order to combat fake news, misinformation, and disinformation. Now, that means news reports like this one, which counter the official story, warning that a deadly virus could potentially escape a level 4 biolab in Wuhan, China, and cause an outbreak is possible. And wouldn't you know it, another coincidence? Yeah, the city of Wuhan, China is the same city where this level 4 biolab is located and appears to be ground zero of this real-world coronavirus outbreak. And currently millions of people are under quarantine as this virus is reportedly spread to more than 10 countries.
So the first thing that you always want to look for is patents. And of course, this has got a bunch of patents. Just this site, Justia, has 19 different patents for the coronavirus. Most of them are animal related. If you scroll down, it has the date that it was filed for, who applied, and who the inventor was. And out of these 19, the majority of them are for animals, canines. This is the one right here that you really got to pay attention to. Coronavirus isolated from human beings. The abstract is disclosed herein is a newly isolated human coronavirus, which is SARS, the causative agent of severe acute respiratory syndrome. And listen to this. The original SARS patent expired today because they didn't pay for the maintenance fee. So instead of keeping up with the maintenance fee, they just released a new virus. And you'll see in a couple minutes why this is so special. If you want to look at the actual patent, blah 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 blah, signees, United States of America, the same abstract, newly isolated human coronavirus, SARS causative agent. And it says right here, this invention was made by the CDC and is owned by the US government. Which normally I expected the Rockefeller Foundation or the Gates foundation to own this, or at least have done the research, but this time it's just owned straight up by the CDC. The next
Now, I urge everyone to please take all this information in with a grain of salt from every source, whether it's this channel or from your sold-out corporate media. Please do your own research. I do not have any vested interests. This channel is not monetized, so I do not profit financially or in any way, really. I do this on my own time. I have a busy life, but this is my passion and this is what I do. Now, like any good detective, one must always ask, who stands to gain from this? Is this all just a coincidence, or is there something else going on? Now, sadly, channels like mine and many others probably will not be around for too much longer, so please be sure to follow me on alternative sites like BitChute, where I post all my videos. I'm also on Twitter. For how long is anybody's guess, so I set up an account on Gab. Now, both BitChute and Gab both pride themselves on not censoring content. You can also find my work at activistpost.com. Please share this report far and wide. For now, I will leave you with another couple clips from this pandemic simulation. I'm Spiro. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more.
I do think that there needs to be sort of an honest broker, a centralized command and control organization that really brings together the public-private sector, both on a global approach and also on a local approach.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. And I wanted to speak to the point about having the honest broker. And I think in this regard, the United Nations fits the bill.
I think a complementary tactic, too, is to tap faith-based organizations and civil society and other institutions to recruit them also to basically, almost at a grassroots level, continue to basically have the integrity of the information.
It's important that the UN and WHO remain very clear, but when they challenge governments directly, they often get into this issue of sovereignty. And so I think it's really important not to have that as the only response. I think it's really critical to think about soft power influence.
As important background for this discussion, we want to start the meeting by viewing this news story that just aired on Global News Network.
Continuing our coverage of the newly discovered CAPS disease and the scope of its deadly outbreaks. There are now more than 30,000 reported cases. Experts warn this may be just the beginning of a global problem. GNN science reporters have produced a video about what we know so far about CAPS, the virus, the outbreak, and the resulting chaos.
CAPS is a novel coronavirus related to those viruses that caused the frightening SARS epidemic in 2003 and the deadly MERS outbreaks in recent years. Scientists think each infected person in turn infects on average 2 more people. This disease is proving more transmissible than SARS or MERS and about as contagious as influenza. Essentially, the cumulative number of cases is doubling every week. At this rate, we can expect to see 16 times as many cases in a month unless we find a way to interrupt transmission. The virus appears to be spreading rapidly in densely populated and impoverished neighborhoods in some megacities in South America. CAPS is a serious respiratory disease. More than half of the recognized cases have required hospital care, creating a huge strain on healthcare systems. The fatality rate is about 10%. For comparison, CAPS is about as lethal as SARS and 2 to 4 times more lethal than the 1918 influenza pandemic, the worst pandemic on record. Even so, some people only exhibit mild flu-like symptoms, not requiring treatment in a hospital. Alarmingly, those people are able to walk around and spread the virus, not realizing they are doing so. Even worse, international travelers have been arriving at their destinations symptom-free, but within a matter of hours, becoming ill. Travel-related cases have blossomed into outbreaks in a number of locations and have quickly grown faster than health authorities could respond and contain them. In other places, physicians have quickly recognized the symptoms of CAPS and have been able to isolate infected individuals and avoid an outbreak, for now. Global public health experts are very concerned about this disease because it appears the virus is readily transmitted through the air from person to person. Essentially, all people are susceptible. Experts agree unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere. Models developed by leading public health authorities indicate a CAPS pandemic could lead to an outcome worse than the 1918 influenza, which killed 50 to 100 million people worldwide. Given the global population is 4 times larger than it was in 1918, if these models prove accurate, we could be looking at hundreds of millions of deaths over the next year or two. The outcome of the CAPS pandemic in Event 201 was catastrophic. 65 million people died in the first 18 months. The outbreak was small at first and initially seemed controllable, but then it started spreading in densely crowded and impoverished neighborhoods of megacities. From that point on, the spread of the disease was explosive. Within 6 months, cases were occurring in nearly every country. The global economy was in a free fall. The GDP down 11%. Stock markets around the world plummeted between 20 and 40% and headed into a downward cycle of fear and low expectation. Businesses were not borrowing, banks were not lending. Everyone was just hoping to hunker down and weather the storm. Economists say the economic turmoil caused by such a pandemic will last for years, perhaps a decade. The societal impacts, the loss of faith in government, the distrust of news, and the breakdown of social cohesion could last even longer.
The line between disinformation and misinformation is not always an easy one to find.
Governments need to be willing to do things that are out of their historical perspective, or for the most part, it's really a war footing that we need to be on.
It can happen quickly. A Marshall-type plan, don't mean to say that exactly, but a Marshall plan that can go into effect can stimulate a change very quickly.
The distrust relates to the health system more generally.
A step up from the part of the government on enforcement actions against fake news.
I think a couple of things we have to consider are, even before this began, the anti-vaccine movement was very strong, and this is something specifically through social media that has spread.
Welcome to Event 201.
The president died 2 months ago, the vice president a week later. Russia no longer has a functioning government. Most of our population is dying or dead. Does Dr. Scott have what she needs to make a vaccine?
7 months ago, outside Cairo, there was an outbreak. The virus was like nothing any of us had ever seen. When we left Norfolk, the virus was at phase 2. We are now at phase 6. Global pandemic.
Hello. I need you to get me the names of everyone who serviced this room. It's an emergency.
You can't panic now.
I know.
I'm gonna get you home. I got people too, Dr. Cheever. We all do.
Don't talk to anyone. Don't touch anyone. Stay away from other people.
Get back in your car. We're not sick.
It's figuring us out faster than we're figuring it out. It's mutated.
Okay, so that is pretty obvious. He wants to set himself up in God's temple. Now you have to ask yourself, where is God's temple? And this is where the massive deception is going on all over the world right now. This verse right here. I'm going to share this with you. 1 Corinthians 3:16. Here's the King James Version. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? Another version. Don't you realize that all of you together are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God lives in you? Enemy is telling you where he wants to set himself up. We, the people, humanity, that's where it's going. In closing, I just want to say thank you to fellow YouTubers, subscribers, had me on their radio shows, live streams, Patreons that have donated to this ministry. I appreciate you over the years. I'm going to leave you with Hebrews 9:27. And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this, the judgment. And that is a very key scripture of telling you, a lot of people ask me, Nicholson, what do we do? How do we combat this? And first I'm going to address the scripture. It is appointed for man to die once. So trying to live forever another way, other than the way we've been shown by the pattern, when people say, you need to follow Christ, what are they talking about? I know, I hope you know. You come as a man and you die as a man. That was the mission. Think about it. He came and he died to overcome death. The enemy thought they were winning by killing him in a physical body. Same thing is going on here. You must do that. You must believe that. In the future, look where it's going. Jesus Christ, the story is becoming a myth. It's a fairy tale. It'll fade away. You have to stick to that core. He showed you something very important. Come as a man and you die as a man. You believe on Him and you overcome death and you get your spiritual body in the next stage of this journey. This is only one stage of this journey. It's just like a butterfly. There's a butterfly and there's a caterpillar. But they're the same, but they're two different stages of development. And that is very important. So, in answering what should we do, keep the faith. Believe on Him. That's why He has to return, is to battle what's going on now. That's not your job per se. You're to tell of the kingdom to come. You tell of who He is and what He's about and what He showed us.